is up, YouTube? My name is Trinity and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. So I know it's taken me a minute to get this video out. This is actually like my third or fourth time recording this just because I'm trying to get used to this new camera and it's been giving me a hard time. But I'm back and I'm excited to finally be recording part 2 of the Dear David saga. So when we left off, Adam was getting ready to go on his trip to Japan and he was just trying to avoid any weirdness going on before leaving. He hoped that being away for a while would have deterred David, the ghost child that had been terrorizing him, from following him. Maybe it would confuse him that Adam was gone for an extended period of time and he would just lose track of him. Before boarding his flight to Japan, Adam thanked all of the followers on Twitter that had been keeping up with his story for their support and said that he'd see them in a few weeks. On his last day in Japan, Adam was walking around a park taking pictures when he found a cylindrical statue in the center of the park, and he took pictures on each side of it until he came across a very familiar figure on one of the sides. Many figures were carved into this pillar, but one was of a very small figure with a misshapen, bulbous head that really resembled David, and that scared him. He said it didn't feel like a coincidence, and it kind of freaked him out. 2 days later, he uploaded that he had made it home safely and that everything seemed pretty normal, save for the fact that his cats were a little chattier than normal. 2 weeks later, he updated his audience that weird things were happening with the electricity in his apartment. Within a week, 2 bulbs in his hallway had burned out, and he decided to just leave it alone because he didn't want to waste another light bulb. He also said that the backlight of his TV would flicker when the TV was off, which shouldn't have been possible because the backlight came from the image on the television. However, after about a week, that stopped and it burned out completely. After this happened, he said he wasn't really able to go back to sleep. He was just restless about the entire situation, so he went out early in the morning and got breakfast at a local diner, and then when he came back, he began getting ready for work. While doing so, he began hearing scratching noises at his front door, and too scared to look through the peephole at whatever was on the other side, he decided to take a couple of pictures. Now, the pictures were kind of blurry and he couldn't really make out anything until he saw what looked like an ear and an eye that really resembled David. At this point, he decided to get someone else involved because the David issue was not going away. Many people, such as ghost hunters and psychics, had contacted Adam and offered to look around his apartment and see what they found, trying to help him out. But he said he didn't really want to commercialize what he was experiencing in his apartment, so instead he just had a friend come over and cleanse his apartment. I don't think he ever specified on what kind of cleansing this friend did, since he had already used sage and that did not seem to work, but I don't know exactly what happened, but he said it felt better for a while. His cats no longer gathered at the door and he stopped having nightmares. He noted that on his way to work one day, he noticed that the warehouse that had been shuttered for the last 2 months was suddenly open, and his curiosity got the better of him and he looked inside, just wondering why, after all this time, it had suddenly opened. And there was nothing really in there, except a hearse parked in the back of the garage. The sight unsettled him, but he just tried to ignore it and went on his way to work. And the next few days went by uneventfully. However, around 11 p.m. a couple nights later, he was walking through his dining room to get a drink of water from the kitchen, and he noticed his cats staring up at the window at something on the neighboring building. He didn't think much of it. He went over and looked and couldn't really see anything, so thought it was just weird cat behavior. But when he went into the kitchen and looked out a window overlooking the same roof, he saw a figure staring at him. He ducked down immediately, obviously terrified, and when he had gathered enough courage, lifted up his phone and tried to snap a couple of pictures of this figure looking in at him. Unfortunately, his phone didn't capture anything. The roof was empty when he looked back at the photos. But he said he was sure it was David, and obviously this problem was not getting any better. At this point, it was November. It had been 4 months since this entire ordeal had started, and it was really starting to weigh on Adam. One night, he had another dream of David. Instead of sitting in the green rocking chair that he had originally sat in, that Adam had moved out of the apartment, he was now in the recliner that sat in the same place, just staring at Adam. But unlike other dreams, he felt a little more alert. He couldn't really move as usual, but he was allowed to wiggle and move his arms around a bit. He was able to reach over and grab his phone, thinking that if David did kill him, then at least he would be able to get some pictures so whoever found him knew what happened. As he began taking pictures of David, David got down off of the chair and began crawling slowly up the bed towards Adam. Eyes rolled back in his head, muttering incomprehensible things. But Adam just kept taking pictures. David kept getting closer and closer, and Adam tried as he might and couldn't writhe away from him. And then suddenly it was daytime, and he was alone in his bedroom. He got up and started getting ready for work, and eventually the dream seemed just like that, a dream, and he started to feel a lot better, until he looked through his camera roll. The most recent pictures, taken the night before, were mostly pitch black, but when you turned up the brightness of some of the pictures, you could see something crawling up his bed. A few days later, he updated his followers that he was alive, and that he had been researching something and didn't want to mention anything on Twitter to them until he was sure about it in case it turned out to be nothing. He refreshed everyone on the layout of his building, how it was a duplex. It was originally one house that was split into two, and that he lived in the upper apartment. Above his stairwell, there was a little hatch that he assumed did go to the roof in case a maintenance worker or something needed to get up there. Now, the reason he decided to start investigating this potential crawl space was because he was beginning to hear noises from above him, which shouldn't have been possible if it was just the roof that had no access. He decided to buy a pole to investigate if he could push open this latch, and then if he could, he would ask the landlord to go explore up there to see if there was anything up there making noise, potentially an animal. Now, unfortunately, this pole didn't arrive before Thanksgiving, and Adam went MIA for a week as he spent the holiday with his family. When Adam returned home, he decided that the next day he would take the pole and investigate the hatch to see if he could get it open. But his plans were changed when he was awoken by a loud crashing noise, like the sound of a dropping bowling ball. He jumped out of bed and he noticed that just the atmosphere around him was heavy and dark and uncomfortable. Wide awake, he heard another crash, and despite wanting to leave his apartment, he didn't want to pass under that latch. So he just waited in his apartment and listened as this noise repeated another 15 times. And then, when it was quiet, he swore he could hear a creaking sound in the hallway, very faintly, and potentially small footsteps. He said he laid back down and eventually fell back asleep, and when he awoke the next morning, everything felt normal again. As he walked down the stairs of his apartment next morning, he noticed piles of dirt and debris everywhere. And when he looked up, he saw something trapped in the very corner of the latch that wasn't there before. He took a picture and zoomed in to gather evidence. He decided to grab his pole at this point and set up his camera to record, and he pushed open the latch, releasing whatever object was trapped beneath it. At first, he couldn't really discern what it was. He just knew it was made out of leather. But then after looking at it for another minute, he realized it was a child's shoe. After that, he texted the landlord that he had been hearing sounds in the crawl space and asked him to bring a ladder and investigate it. The landlord said okay, and that he would be there later in the day. Though when he eventually arrived and looked around the crawl space, he said there was nothing up there. He then found a little object and he said, "Accept this," and handed it to Adam, and it turned out to be a small marble, but Adam really couldn't connect it to anything that had been happening. The landlord said if he heard anything else to let him know, but there was really nothing else he could do. Adam disappeared for another few weeks, attributing his lack of updates to just not feeling well. He said he wasn't sleeping well, and when he did, he was having strange, incomprehensible dreams that were disturbing him, and he was having frequent bouts of dizziness. He said he tried to convince himself that finding the shoe and the marble had somehow ended the activity, but he knew that wasn't true. The previous week, he had woken up very suddenly and felt very uneasy, like something had just been watching him. But when he turned on the light, he was alone. The feeling of wrongness didn't go away, though, explaining it as the feeling that he associated with David, a palpable feeling of malice. He said the same thing happened the following night. He woke up feeling like he had just missed something. He considered using the camera that he had gotten to watch his cats while he was away, but the cord wasn't long enough to mount where it could see everything in the room, so he decided to get an app on his phone that would take a picture about every 30 seconds. He set it up on his dresser and then went to bed. He was jolted awake just a couple of hours later and rushed over to his dresser and grabbed his phone, eager to look at what the camera had captured. He took the time to go through all 350 pictures, and most of them were just his room, empty, as he tossed and turned. And then it captured a small figure standing on the chair near the end of his bed, watching him. In the next one, David seemed to be staring up at the ceiling, and then the next dozen or so he was collapsed lifelessly on the chair until he disappeared. About 15 photos later, he was back standing beside the bed, right next to Adam. Adam said at this point he did not want to keep scrolling. He didn't want to know how close David had gotten or what he was doing, but he knew deep down he had to. The rest of the photos seemed to be normal. David had disappeared and it was just Adam once again, until the very last one. The last one showed David's head in the corner of the shot, showing his ear and part of his face, reminiscent of the picture that Adam had taken from his peephole. Adam said he was at a loss that the camera had managed to capture David exactly as he had appeared in his dreams. He just couldn't seem to process it, and he just expressed how exhausted he was of all of this. Adam didn't update for the next week as he had gone to Montana to visit his family for Christmas. He said being in another state, he immediately felt better. He felt safer and calmer, and he considered maybe he could outrun David. He even began looking for new apartments when he was there. For the first time in a long time, actually entertaining the thought that he could escape David. But then, while still in his family home, he started to get that bad feeling again. One night while he was using the bathroom, he said he just had a feeling that something was moving outside the window. And the next morning when he checked, he found what could have been animal tracks. He couldn't really tell, but experienced the same thing the next night. And when he looked out, he said he couldn't see anything for sure, but he thought he saw some movement, but couldn't determine what it was. The next morning, when he looked around his family's garage to look for more footprints, these ones weren't animal footprints. They were small children's footprints. David had found him. Adam didn't leave his room at night anymore. He was just terrified and defeated. He didn't know what to do. He felt hopeless. David had found him. David would always find him. He returned to his apartment, unsure of what to do next. He said he could still feel David watching him, but nothing showed up on his photo app anymore, except the night before this next update happened. David was hovering over Adam's bed, still muttering incomprehensible things that Adam couldn't even begin to decipher. Adam could only stare up at him, frozen in place, until David came crashing down into his chest. And then Adam woke up, alone as he always had. The final photo he retrieved from his phone showed David falling onto him. A few weeks later, Adam updated that the activity had seemingly ceased after his last update, and that he was feeling a lot better. His dreams had stopped and nothing else was captured on his phone, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something still wasn't right. He seemed to lose time, not remember certain things, and asked people to repeat things to him when they had never said anything to begin with. Then one day he responded to many people tweeting at him about an Instagram post he had uploaded. The first posts were very mundane, just him hanging out with a friend, though the one that people were talking about seemed to be a very glitched photo of him and his friend, with part of David's face overlaid onto his. Adam said he did not know what was going on with his face, that he could guess, but he just wanted to put the whole thing to rest and leave it alone. He didn't want to think about it. He wanted to leave it in the past. He promised to update if any more happened. A few days later, he uploaded a video of his cat meowing at the door, and then turning around and presumably meowing at Adam behind the camera. His following tweets were strangely calm. Everything is fine, and asking his followers not to worry about him, and everything would be like it was before. And his final tweet, "For everyone asking if I'm alive, I'm doing okay. It's been pretty quiet around here lately and I've been trying to focus on work. Of course, I'll keep you updated if anything strange happens, but for now, I'm staying busy with drawing and other projects." And on that final eerie tweet, the Dear David saga ended, and not long after, Adam announced that there would be a movie chronicling his paranormal experiences. The sudden drop-off of activity indicates that this was either some sort of ARG that Adam wanted to tell a story very creatively, or even a way of marketing a story that Adam was getting ready to tell on the big screen. Or maybe bits and pieces were true, and then somebody approached Adam wanting to turn his experiences into a movie. But either way, the Dear David saga will go down as history as an excellent form of internet horror. But thank you all so much for watching this video. It's taken me so long to get this out, and I hope the editing process is not full of problems like the recording process has been. If you like this video, be sure to click the like button and share with a friend if you think they'd like this video as well. And if you're not subscribed, please subscribe and click the notification bell so you'll be notified when I upload. If you're a fan of internet horror like this, then you're going to want to check out my internet horror playlist that I'll link down below. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.